There is a particular kind of loneliness that has no name. It's not the loneliness of being in an empty room. It's not the loneliness of being abandoned or forgotten. It's something quieter, something more invisible. It's the loneliness of sitting in a crowded room, surrounded by laughter and noise, and feeling like you are watching it all through glass. Present, but not quite there. And if you've ever felt that, if you've ever smiled at the right moments, laughed at the right jokes, said the right things, while a part of your mind was somewhere else entirely, then this is for you. Because what most people never tell you about having a very high intelligence is this: it doesn't feel like a gift. Not always, not in the quiet moments. In the quiet moments, it feels like carrying a weight that no one else can see. A weight made not of sadness, but of awareness, an awareness that never shuts off, an awareness that watches and questions and searches even when you desperately wish it would just rest. Psychology has spent decades studying intelligence, IQ tests, cognitive benchmarks, problem-solving matrices. But very rarely does science stop to ask the more human question: what does it actually feel like inside a mind that processes the world differently? What is the emotional experience of a brain that never quite fits the pace of the world around it? Because here's what the research quietly reveals: beneath all the numbers and percentiles, high intelligence is not simply about knowing more. It is about experiencing more, feeling more, noticing more, and sometimes carrying more than anyone around you realizes. Think of it like this. Imagine everyone around you is watching a film on a standard screen. They see the story, they follow the plot, they feel the emotion. But you are watching that same film, except your screen shows you everything, the subtext beneath every line of dialogue, the symbolism in every frame, the inconsistencies in the storyline, the lighting choices, the music theory behind the score. You aren't watching a film anymore. You are dissecting one. And while everyone else laughs at the joke in scene 3, you are still sitting with a thought from scene 1 that no one else even noticed. That is what a high IQ mind does to ordinary life. It doesn't let things simply be. It has to understand them. It has to turn them over and examine them from every angle. And the tragedy, the part no one warns you about, is that this habit of mind doesn't stay inside books or classrooms or intellectual debates. It follows you into every conversation, every relationship, every quiet Tuesday evening when the world expects you to simply relax. Psychologists call this cognitive hyperactivity, the brain's tendency to keep processing even when processing isn't needed. And while it sounds impressive on paper, in lived experience, it often feels like exhaustion, like a computer that never enters sleep mode, like a city that never turns its lights off. And here is where it begins to get deeply human. Because this kind of mind, this constantly, running constantly, questioning mind, doesn't develop in a vacuum. It develops inside a childhood, inside a family, inside a classroom, inside every experience where this child looked at the world and felt instinctively that something didn't quite add up. Many highly intelligent people, when they look back at their childhoods, describe a feeling that is surprisingly consistent across cultures, across backgrounds, across experiences. They describe feeling out of place, not rejected necessarily, not always, but just slightly off frequency. Like a radio that's almost tuned to the station, but not quite, close enough to hear the music, but with just enough static to remind you that you're not fully there. And what does a child do with that feeling? A child who is too young to have the language for it, too small to have the framework to understand it. They do what all children do when they encounter something they cannot explain. They adapt. But the way a high IQ child adapts the specific armor they build, the specific walls they construct around that beautiful, restless mind, that is where the story becomes something far more complex than any IQ test could ever measure. Some of them become quiet, extraordinarily quiet. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they learned early on that what they said didn't always land the way they intended. They'd make a connection that no one else saw. They'd ask a question that made the room uncomfortable. They'd notice something that everyone else had agreed silently to ignore, and slowly, without anyone telling them directly, they understood it is safer to observe than to speak. So they became watchers, students of people. They sat at the edges of conversations and read the room like a book, tracking emotional undercurrents, noticing contradictions, filing away patterns. And while this made them deeply perceptive, it also made them deeply lonely. Because there is a particular ache in understanding people better than they understand themselves, while never quite feeling understood in return. Others adapted differently. They became performers of normalcy. They learned the social script, the right laugh, the right amount of vulnerability to share, the right opinions to express in the right rooms. They became fluent in a language that never quite felt like their mother tongue, and they were good at it. Good enough that no one ever suspected how much energy it cost them. How they'd come home at the end of the day and feel hollowed out, not from doing too much, but from pretending for hours to be slightly less than what they were. Psychology calls this masking, and it is exhausting in a way that sleep cannot fix. But here is the shift. Here is where the story turns. All of that, the solitude, the overthinking, the quiet withdrawal, the relentless search for meaning, none of it was weakness. It was wisdom wearing the wrong label. It was a mind trying to survive in a world that hadn't yet learned how to hold it. And maybe that's the most healing thought of all. You were never broken. You were just built for a kind of depth that takes the world a little longer to appreciate. If something in these words felt familiar, if this felt less like a video and more like a mirror, then you are not alone. And you never were. If this story stayed with you, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it tonight.